It was a prison within a prison, and it was a place of despair.
Sarah Trevelyan was one of a number of high-profile supporters, including Lord Longford, who was so convinced that Hindley had been harshly treated by the courts that they had begun a public and controversial campaign for her release.
I couldn't see much evidence there that she actually physically molested a child, and to me that is quite an important point in the fact that saying I don't think she deserved the sentence she got, and I think she should definitely have parole now.
But convincing the prison authorities was a different matter. If Hindley was going to escape from Durham, she would have to do it through the parole board.
Each time she would go through this awful roller coaster of build-up to the, parole decision, which it'd go on for months, and then suddenly out of the blue, the kind of letdown again, and she would plummet into the depths of depression. There would just be long periods when just a blackness, and she would find it very difficult to motivate herself.
What Hindley hadn't counted on was that there could be no chance of parole until she stopped claiming innocence and started showing remorse for her crimes. She'd gone down for her part in the Moors murders of Leslie Ann Downey, John Kilbride and Edward Evans, but rumours had always linked her to the disappearance of 2 more children, Pauline Reed and Keith Bennett. In Manchester, Keith's mother, Winnie, had been kept in the dark over the loss of their eldest son for 20 years.
I knew Keith would never be found because Brady and Hindley had had him and murdered him. That was in my mind, but it was proving it that was the point.
Hindley and Brady had always denied their involvement in the killings, but police and victims' relatives in Manchester suspected otherwise.
There's one time, and this woman come towards me, she said, "You're Mrs. Johnson, aren't you?" So I said, "Yeah." She said, "Well, you know what they've done to Keith, don't you?" I said, "No." She said, "They cut him up and give him to the pigs." Well, my mum went berserk. "Why don't you leave the poor bloody woman alone? She's gone to Reno."
Soon Winnie would have her answer, and Hindley would leave her supporters betrayed.
I believed what she told me was the truth as far as she knew it. Subsequently discovered there was a lot that she didn't tell me.
Hindley was about to come clean, but the revelations would cement her reputation as Britain's personification of evil. (1982), and 16 years had passed since Myra Hindley and Ian Brady were sentenced to life imprisonment for the murder of 3 children. Four governments had come and gone, but attitudes towards Hindley remained unchanged, and she had spent nearly half her life inside campaigning for her release. Now a move to a more open prison signalled that parole might at last be a possibility for Britain's longest-serving female prisoner.
Because she wasn't treated as a normal prisoner, she was a special celeb con, so she had special perks.
Loathing from the public on the outside was translated personally to Hindley by inmates on the inside, some of whom will only speak out if their identity remains hidden.
We had a lot of trouble with the officers because basically they were on her side. She was treated totally different to any other prisoner that I've ever seen before. They used to cut her hair, they used to have conversations with her, and bearing in mind she is a killer. It was an insult to those children and the families to see the way that she was living. The fact that Myra had passed some exam and they'd laid out all the table in the dining room for her to have a party with jelly and ice cream and biscuits and crisps, etc. Myself and a few others went and wrecked the whole of the table and made sure that there was no party to be had for obvious reasons.
Hatred of the so-called Moors murderers had long been fueled by suspicions over the disappearance of 2 more children. Pauline Reed and Keith Bennett had been missing since the 60s, but Hindley had always denied any involvement. By 1985, parole was a possibility, and Hindley had finally started prison counselling in an effort to face up to her crimes, something that she had been unwilling or unable to do until now.
Nobody really ever asked her, you know. Nobody ever got close enough to her as a person for her to be able to trust them to say what happened on the moors and what happened with Brady and her life and so on.
Hindley had met Reverend Peter Timms, a prison counsellor, through Lord Longford. Finally, she began to talk.
She just went through the whole sad saga of what had happened, really. She talked the facts. I mean, you know, she talked the facts very adequately and thoroughly. But the real talk of the feelings issues and her responses and who she was and why Brady had had this influence upon her and why she got locked into that relationship in a way that she did, I don't think we ever really got sufficiently into that.
Hindley's confessions to Timms remained secret until 1986, when she was forced to show her hand. She had dealt with some of the ghosts from her past, but she hadn't counted on the intervention of another one. Ian Brady. From his prison cell, he exposed her lies. He and Hindley had killed 2 more children, Pauline Reed and Keith Bennett, and buried them on the moors.
Why did he confess at that time? You know, and it's possible that he felt that she was making some progress in her campaign to be eventually liberated, and he wanted to make sure that she wouldn't stand a chance. I don't know.
The governor rang me at home and put Myra on the phone. And Myra said that she'd like to go on the record. She'd like to actually make a formal statement. She was ready now. I tried to dissuade her from doing that, I confess. I said, look, you really ought to give yourself a week or a fortnight rest and then think about it. But she said, no, I should have done it 20 odd years ago.
Manchester police came to Cookham Wood Prison. Hindley, forced into a corner by Brady's confessions, finally admitted her involvement in the 3 murders she'd been convicted of, and those of Pauline Reed and Keith Bennett.
I've agreed to help the Manchester police in any way possible, and have today identified from photographs and maps places that I know were of particular interest to Ian Brady, some of which I visited with him. In spite of 22 years' passage of time, I have searched my heart and memory and given whatever help I can to the police.
But Hindley's revelations came at a huge personal cost. She had always denied all knowledge of the child murders. Now her public confessions left 2 more families destroyed and her supporters reeling.
I felt sick, you know, physically sick, when this emerged. Confused, and I had this very good relationship with Myra, really, and I'm very, very fond of her and truly supported her through all of these years, and had done a lot of work on this campaign for her to try and, you know, to see that she would have a chance of being released. When this came to light, it was, you know, just gutted, sick.
She was a murderer, and I believed she wasn't. I just thought, she's Myra. I desperately wanted her to believe her. We sometimes had such fun. I so wanted her to believe her. But I'll never forgive her. And God will never forgive her neither, and may she rot in hell.
If I had the opportunity, I would have killed her, because I had that much anger in me. I must admit,